Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and this is my reading report ending 7/29/2023. And it has been a pretty good reading week. I had one outing this week on the last day of the week, and that was going out to the sticks of Virginia, where they had a bed and breakfast, where it was the original birthplace of our fourth president, James Madison. And it was just a lovely location way, way out there. And we're going there for some Cajun dinner and an Elvis impersonation concert. Unfortunately, the concert sort of got rained out, and the poor Elvis impersonator had all his sound equipment soaked by a very sudden and tumultuous storm. But he did get up and go in a little while later. And, it's okay. I can't really judge Elvis impersonators. I'm not really an Elvis fan, but it was kind of a fun evening. And that's the only thing I did in this week, really, other than read and chores. So what books have I been reading? First book I finished was on my Kindle. It is Wolf Moon by David Irons. The tagline for this book is, "It's always a full moon in outer space," because this is a science fiction / horror novel about a wolf in outer space. And the author said he had originally written a film script or intended it to be a film, but that film never really got developed. So he just turned his script into a novel. And it does sort of read that way. It is ridiculously implausible. It's just, there's no good science in this book. It's labeled science fiction, but it might as well just be fantasy. His science is just so off the mark. And of course, it does have a werewolf in outer space, which is, okay, it's kind of a fun concept. It was a very fun, very quick read. Totally Garbogust material, even though I read it just before Garbogust. And the author put a couple tidbits, a couple of the names in there you could recognize. Like one of the main characters' names is Talbert. And if you are at all familiar with the original movie, The Wolfman, you will know that there is a character called Talbert in that movie. Also, one of the names of the spaceships is named after the scriptwriter. So that was another little tidbit. There are probably some more tidbits in that book, but I'm just not that up on my Wolfman movies to pick them all out. It's fun. Don't take it seriously. Just a ridiculous read. The second book I finished was this one. This is The Bill of Obligations by Richard Haass. It is a political book, so this little review is going to get a little political. He is on the author is on the opposite spectrum of the political side from me. But it is important to look to see what other people are saying when they don't belong to your own political beliefs. And this author described himself as a Republican, but he said he stopped being a Republican after Donald Trump won, because Donald Trump's Republican Party is not this author's Republican Party. And what he is trying to do is bring both parties back together again so they can cooperate with each other. And his idea is essentially based off the Bill of Rights. And there are 10 amendments to the Bill of Rights, saying these are the rights that all citizens of the United States have. And he wants to introduce a Bill of Obligations, because all citizens, as he would like to say, have obligations being a citizen. Honestly, I read all his obligations, and why I don't agree with him 100%. I can't honestly say that he's entirely wrong. And I'm just going to read off his bill of obligations and give a very short summary. Obligation 1, be informed. Basically, have all the knowledge that you can about the subject. Yeah, I gotta believe that. Obligation number 2, get involved. Get your butt off the chair and go vote. If you can do more, get involved in local politics, do that too. I kind of agree with that. Obligation number 3, stay open to compromise. Basically, when you're dealing with someone of a different political belief, you have to make compromises. And you have to agree that you get this, I get that, and somewhere in the middle we will agree. I kind of agree with that. And yeah. Obligation number 4, remain civil. Don't go insulting your political opponents. Treat them with respect, like human beings, because there are human beings. I kind of agree with that. Obligation number 5, reject violence. He goes a lot with Gandhi and Martin Luther King saying, nonviolence is the way to go for political change. I kind of agree with that. He needs to maybe look a little more history, such as a book that I read this month about the Jews being imprisoned in Warsaw ghettos. And yeah, political nonviolence is not going to help them. But mostly, I do agree with them. Obligation number 6, value norms. There are norms of behavior that you want to follow. I kind of agree with that. I think I might disagree a little more than that, but not huge disagreement. Obligation number 7, promote the common good. We all live in this country and we all have to agree. Yeah, kind of agree there. Obligation number 8, respect government service. The people employed by the federal government are not your enemies. Totally agree with that. And the fact that my wife is a federal government employee, so I really have to agree with that one. Obligation number 9, support teaching civics. Basically, people should know about their government. They should name their 3 branches of government, and be able to pass like a civil, the test that immigrants have to pass. You should know that much history. Kind of agree with that. Obligation number 10, put country first. He's talking about patriotism and kind of, I'm not what I would consider a patriot, but he's saying we all need to support our country. Sort of agree with him there. But really, this book is not for people like me. This is for people who are still supporting Donald Trump. And he wants to say, let's get away from this Trumpism and get back to a more reasonable, more rational form of government. So while I can't say that I totally enjoyed this book, I did not disagree with it as much as I thought I would when I took it out of the library. Next books I finished was an audiobook. It is An Immense World by Ed Yong. This book is still up for the BookTube prize in nonfiction, and I am a judge for the final round of nonfiction. So all I'm going to say about my reading of An Immense World, it is about the animal kingdom and how animals perceive the world. There's the word Umwelt, which is basically how animals perceive the world. And all animals perceive it differently. And for example, a dog perceives the world with its nose. The nose, in the sense of smell, is the most important sense to a dog. So if we want to understand dogs, we really have to understand the world through a sense of smell. That's all I'll say for this now. Next one I read was an audiobook, The Moon is Down by John Steinbeck. This fills my obligation for the Steinbeck Summer, which is being promoted by MJ at Reading This Life. Now, this book was published right in World War II. And it was originally conceived as a piece of propaganda. And it is a propaganda novel. But John Steinbeck is also a very highly accomplished author. And it does rise above the level of propaganda. It is nowhere near his best novel, but it's okay as a novel and as a work of propaganda. When Steinbeck originally wrote the first draft, it was set in the United States, where unnamed country has invaded and taken over a small part of the United States. And the early reader says, this really doesn't work in the United States. So he transferred it to an unnamed country in Europe. Norway is the most likely candidate, and has been invaded by an army. Obviously, Germany is the most likely candidate, even though he does not mention Norway and he does not mention Germany in this novel. And it is about how the invaders take over this country and basically set their authoritarian rule. They are the conquerors and the villagers are the conquerees. The conquerees are really not happy with the conquerors, and they start forming a resistance. And apparently that this novel did extraordinarily well in Europe during World War II. It's translated into Swedish, to Norwegian, into French, and it sold a lot of books because these people were under the German rule, and they wanted a book about resisting conquerors. So I thought it was a pretty good book. As I said, it's nowhere near Steinbeck's best book, but it is well worth your read. It's a very short book. It is like 112 pages long, so you can read it in a night, maybe two if you're a really slow reader. But I do recommend it. The next book I finished, I have actually started reading this earlier in July, and that was the Stygian Collection, an anthology of AuthorTube. And this is edited by Holly Rhiannon and Pei Vio. Both of those are booktubers, and all the contributors are also booktubers. So you get to read short stories by your friends on BookTube. Now, I am going to say that none of the stories in this collection are knock it out of the park good, but they're decent stories. They're probably better stories than I could write. So go out, support BookTube and your friends on BookTube, and get this collection of short stories by your friends. It is available on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited or in paperback. So, yeah, I would suggest reading these stories. The next book I read was a book I could have read from Garb August. This is Dean Koontz' Shadowfires. It was published in 1987. He originally wrote it under a pseudonym by Lee Nichols. And it is, of course, a horror novel. Now, to start this book, starts out with a woman going to a lawyer's office for a divorce. Her husband is a very rich man with a biotech company. Of course, this is the 80s. And he's worth like $30 million. And when she goes to the divorce, she says, I don't want half your money because it's set in California and she's legally entitled to half of his income, or $15 million. He says, give me $500,000, call it a day. And that just makes her husband so mad because he thinks he's insulting her. He's not only insulting her because she wants a divorce, she's sort of insulting his success in the world. So they have a huge fight out in the street. He turns around in a huff and races out in the street and gets run over by a truck and killed. And so she goes home extremely nervous. She's terrified. And she gets a gun from her chest of drawers and holds it close to her. And then a man she's sort of been dating comes by, and they're talking about the death of her husband. And then she gets a call from the morgue. Her husband's body has disappeared. This is a horror novel. You kind of know where it's going. You won't know exactly, but But what I liked about early Dean Koontz, and I'm going from memory, is that Dean Koontz said he always wants a touch of plausibility in his plots. And yeah, there is a touch of plausibility when you get down to it. Not a whole lot of plausibility, but just a touch of plausibility. And I appreciated that. Now, this is a 500-page horror novel. I read this in like, 2.5 days. It reads very quick. It's not very complicated. You don't need a whole lot of brain power to read this book, but it is very enjoyable. The last book I finished was The Child and the River by Henri, Bosco. This is a very short novella. It is only 80 pages long. It is translated from the French and was originally published in, 1950, early 50s, late 40s, somewhere around there. It is narrated by an old man remembering his childhood. It does not explicitly say when it is located. I am guessing in like the final years of the 19th century, somewhere around there. And this young child is living with his parents in a very rural location. And they say, you can do anything you want, but you cannot go to the river. So one time his parents were away for a short period of days, and he's being taken care of by his grandmother, and he decides to go visit the river. And he goes on a river expedition in an old dilapidated boat. This has been called sort of the Huckleberry Finn of France. I did enjoy it. It is very wistful, very amusing, but there's not a lot of depth to this book. It is just an enjoyable little novella. So that is everything I have read for the week. And what am I currently reading? Well, it's Garb August, baby. You know there's going to be a whole lot of trashy books that I'm reading. And you'll have to stay tuned to next week when another boobyphile reads Playboy for the articles is going to be taking my place to review what books he has read for the first week of Garb August. Thank you very much for watching, and keep on reading.